My name is Rachel Donovan, and for 12 years, my job was to listen to numbers when everyone else preferred applause. I was the senior marketing data strategist at Northbridge Retail Group, a company that didn't just sell products during Christmas, it sold the feeling of Christmas itself. Our ads looked like short films. Our flagship stores turned into winter fairy tales. We sponsored skating rinks, tree lightings, and half the city's holiday nostalgia. People thought the magic came from creativity. It didn't. It came from math. My math. And on the night of our annual December town hall, in a ballroom packed with 400 employees and artificial snow falling from the ceiling, the CEO's wife decided to erase me on stage to make herself look powerful. What she didn't realize was that every dollar of her $9.2 million holiday campaign was running on an engine I built, licensed, and quietly controlled. The ballroom smelled like warm cider and machine-made pine. A 12-foot LED snowflake hovered above the stage, pulsing softly, as if it had a heartbeat. I was seated in the fifth row with my data team, the quiet section of the company sandwiched between the creatives and the brand managers. We weren't flashy. We were necessary. Our CEO, Thomas Callahan, was wrapping up his usual speech about synergy, gratitude, and family. He wore a cashmere sweater and avoided eye contact like it might accuse him of something. Everyone was waiting for the last slide. The Christmas bonus confirmation. In a company obsessed with vibes, bonuses were still tied to performance metrics, my metrics. Then Thomas smiled nervously and said, "Before we close, I want to introduce the visionary behind this year's Winterluxe campaign." My stomach tightened. My wife, Vivian Callahan. The applause was immediate and enthusiastic. Vivian stepped onto the stage like she belonged there, sharp lines, tailored wool, blonde hair pulled into a severe bun that looked expensive enough to have its own insurance policy. She didn't walk. She glided. She took the microphone, smiled, and said, "Family is everything at Northbridge. And in a family, we support the dreamers." I expected her to click to the bonus slide. She didn't. She tapped the microphone instead, letting the feedback squeal just long enough to command attention. But in a family, she continued, lowering her voice with practiced sincerity, we also confront resistance. The room shifted. This wasn't the script. Winterluxe was built on bold vision, she said, gesturing to the massive logo behind her. And yet, that vision was met with friction. With outdated thinking. With teams who struggle to align. Her eyes found me. Deliberately. The analytics department, she said, pausing, and Rachel Donovan in particular. 400 heads turned. My team froze. One of my analysts stopped breathing entirely. Vivian smiled like she was offering condolences. While we value Rachel's history here, her Christmas bonus is being withheld this year, pending her full alignment with our new creative direction. The silence was absolute. No coughs. No whispers. Just the hum of the snowflake above her head. Thomas stared at the exit sign. He said nothing. Vivian continued, energized by the lack of resistance. She talked about brave leadership, about reinvesting my bonus back into the campaign, about not letting old data models block innovation. Innovation, she called it. That's what she called it when I refused to approve projections based on influencers that didn't exist and engagement that was statistically impossible. When she finished, a few people clapped. Then more joined in, not out of support, but out of desperation to end the moment. I didn't react. I kept my face neutral. But inside, something clicked into place with terrifying clarity. 3 weeks earlier, our CFO, Michael Reyes, had called me into his office and closed the door. Vivian's projections are optimistic, he said, rubbing his temples. They're fictional, I replied. He nodded. You're the only one who can challenge her numbers, Rachel. Which means you're dangerous. He was right. And Vivian knew it. She didn't cancel my bonus because she was cruel. She did it because she needed to discredit me. To silence the one system that couldn't be charmed. To understand why that mattered, you need to know what Northbridge looked like 10 years ago. It wasn't a holiday empire. It was a failing regional chain bleeding relevance. Back then, I wasn't an employee. I was a 25-year-old consultant with a one-person LLC called Signal Harbor Analytics, and I had built something no one else had. An optimization engine I called Northstar. It looked like a dashboard, but underneath, it scraped inventory levels, weather data, foot traffic, pricing, and behavioral signals to predict ROI with brutal accuracy. When Northbridge planned a rebrand that would have bankrupted them by Q3, Northstar screamed red. I told Thomas the truth. He listened. Sales jumped 40% in a quarter. The company was resurrected. They wanted me in-house. I agreed, on one condition. Northstar stayed mine. They licensed it. Human Resources copy-pasted my consulting terms into my employment contract without legal review because they were desperate. Buried in that contract was a clause stating Signal Harbor retained full ownership of the source code and administrative privileges, granting Northbridge a revocable license to use the output. For years, it didn't matter. Until Vivian arrived. She didn't believe in algorithms. She believed in aesthetics. She overruled data with mood boards and called numbers an accessory. 6 months ago, she forced an integration addendum so Northstar would feed directly into her new automation platform. She didn't read the clause that said any campaign over $5 million had to pass my fraud and brand safety protocols, or the system would automatically suspend processing. Winterlux was budgeted at $9.2 million. That night, after the town hall, I sat alone in my apartment, still in my dress, documents spread across my desk. I reviewed the addendum. I checked the vendor routing. And there it was. Velvet Aurora Creative, the primary agency for Winterlux, newly formed, routed through private wealth banking channels, connected to Vivian's social circle. This wasn't incompetence. It was self-dealing. She needed inflated projections to get board approval. Northstar would never validate them. So she silenced me, lied about my sign-off, and pushed the spend through. She thought cutting my bonus would cut my power. What she actually did was trigger the clause that gave me the authority to protect my engine from corruption. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt calm. Because if Winterlux failed the checks, I wouldn't be taking revenge. I'd be enforcing a contract. And math doesn't care who you're married to. The week after the town hall moved quietly, the way disasters always do right before they announce themselves. While the rest of Northbridge Retail Group rushed around drowning in garland, deadlines, and fake snow, I sat in my office with the door closed, reading contracts and watching systems. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is loud and sloppy. What I felt was focus. Winterlux was scheduled for national launch on December 6th, a 3-day countdown plastered across internal dashboards like a victory clock. Vivian was everywhere, smiling for trade interviews, talking about energy, emotion, and how this campaign would redefine the holidays. What she didn't know was that Northstar had already started listening. At 2 a.m, I logged into the system as the licensor, not the employee. I initiated a full integrity audit, a routine process on paper, but one that ignored every whitelist she had forced through IT. In audit mode, Northstar doesn't care about titles. It checks everything. Vendors, traffic sources, influencer authenticity, payment routing. If the data is clean, nothing happens. If it isn't, the system protects itself. And by extension, the company. Launch morning arrived like a parade. At 9 a.m. sharp, the war room erupted. Screens lit up. Numbers surged. Vivian stood in the center of it all in a white coat meant for cameras, arms open, soaking in applause as impressions climbed into the millions. On my second monitor, the one no one ever looked at, the truth was ugly. Fraud rates spiked past 50%. Then 70. Then 80. Influencer traffic originated from a single overseas server cluster. Display ads routed through domains already flagged by global ad safety alliances. Within 7 minutes, Northstar crossed the threshold. The safeguard executed automatically. No crash. No warning. Just silence. Across the country, digital billboards went dark. Social ads vanished mid-scroll. Streaming platforms replaced Winterluxe spots with default fillers. In the war room, confusion turned to panic. Media buyers lost access. Vendors stopped responding. Vivian's smile froze as her camera crew slowly lowered their lenses. My phone rang. It was Michael Reyes. I told him the truth in one sentence. The system detected fraud and shut the campaign down. He didn't argue. He just whispered, "Jesus," and hung up. Vivian didn't call. She stormed into my office. Her composure was gone, replaced by raw fury. She accused me of sabotage, of jealousy, of betrayal. I didn't raise my voice. I slid my contract across the desk and explained that Northstar belonged to Signal Harbor Analytics, not Northbridge, and that any attempt to bypass its integrity protocols constituted a material breach. I explained that firing me in retaliation would revoke the license entirely. That meant not just Winterluxe, but inventory systems, e-commerce, forecasting. The entire company would go dark. For the first time since I'd known her, Vivian had nothing to say. The board meeting happened 2 hours later. Evidence filled the screen. Vendor shell companies. Circular billing. Fake influencers created from stock photos. And then the final blow, delivered by a board member who had commissioned an external audit without telling anyone. Vivian had been using company resources to build her private agency's portfolio. It wasn't a creative risk. It was theft. The room went quiet. The vote was unanimous. Winterluxe was terminated permanently. Velvet Aurora Creative was suspended. An independent investigation was opened. Vivian was asked to leave the room. She passed me on the way out and whispered that I had ruined her name. I replied calmly, "You did that. I just documented it." The aftermath was surgical. Press releases framed the shutdown as a triumph of internal controls. Investors applauded the discipline. Internally, the culture shifted overnight. Data wasn't optional anymore. Thomas offered me a C-suite role days later, a promotion wrapped in apology. I declined. Instead, I reactivated Signal Harbor Analytics as an independent firm. Northbridge became my client, not my employer. My retainer dwarfed the bonus Vivian had tried to withhold. Vivian resigned quietly soon after, citing personal projects. The investigation continued without her. On my last day in the building as an employee, I walked past a stack of discarded Winterluxe props, glittering snowflakes and banners no one would ever see again. In my new office above a bookstore, Northstar hummed steadily, monitoring campaigns built on truth, not ego. I didn't destroy Christmas. I canceled fraud. And that's the difference between revenge and accountability. If you enjoyed this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you believe data should always beat ego, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Sometimes the quietest person in the room holds the off switch, and sometimes that's exactly how it should be.